Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is the Edge of Conception. My name is Liz. I am a certified nurse midwife, and on this channel I like to talk to you all about things regarding fertility, conception, contraception, pregnancy, postpartum, GYN care, and hopefully through menopause super soon. But I have the added decisive power that I want to talk to you also about the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of these conversations with that additive lens. So let's get right into it. Today's video, I think, will be a very powerful video. I'm super excited for what we talk about and what is given to us and transmuted. If you see my eyes dart around, I do have a script that I follow, especially when it comes to evidence-based medicine and midwifery things. I value knowing the facts and not going based off of just because. I feel like starting off well informed is the bedrock of what we do here at Edge of Conception, to then use that as a springboard into manifestation, into self-actualization, into the psycho-spiritual lens that we end off with. So yeah, today we're talking about age and fertility and navigating that pressure. So this is a narrative that has been following women with the ambition and timelines for a really long time. It definitely sounds like a clock. It sounds like urgency. It sounds like you waited too long, like your window's closing, like your body's working against you. And today we're going to look specifically at what's actually true about age and fertility, the real numbers, not fear-based. And then we're going to talk about what that narrative has been costing you beyond the biology, beyond the ovulation, beyond all the things. Because the pressure of the timeline is doing something to you that no one can actually measure clinically when it comes to your fertility. So what is the evidence? What is the meat and the potatoes, right? Age-related fertility decline is primarily driven by reduction of both the number and the quality of eggs, with more rapid decline beginning in the mid-30s and accelerating after the age of 40. It is real. It is biological, and it is a very honest reality. And I'm not going to soften this, nor am I going to make this an alarmist type of conversation. This is evidence-based. And the way I like to share it with women, like just with my hands, I'm like, you have your fertility, and as you age, you reach like mid-30s, usually 35, and then you see you don't see a sharp decline, you just see a decline. And then when you reach 40, you see a sharper decline. And what the actual data sets of large studies show is that following women trying to conceive found that the chance of pregnancy after 12 months was around 87% between the ages of 30 to 31. And this dropped to 76% at ages 36 to 37. And 54% at the age of 40 to 41. So we have that 87 between 30 and 31 dropping to 76 around 36 and 37, with an even sharper drop of 54 from 40 to 41. At 40 to 41, the age most women have been told is nearly impossible is to conceive. Over half of women are trying to conceive did so within 12 months. The cliff does not exist the way the narrative always describes it to be. 40 to 41, yes, is a sharp decline, but 54% between the ages of 40 to 41 with a 12-month span of trying to conceive is pretty solid numbers. That's 50%. How common is the fear, and how is it being distorted? Let's get into that. The decrease in the chance of pregnancy after 35 is gradual, more like a slope than a cliff, as we describe, at least until 40. The data that originally generates that 35 is the deadline conversation came from French birth records from the 1700s. Not modern women, not women who have access to current nutritional knowledge, medical support, lifestyle optimization, but also with that added effect with including the change in our life expectancy, the change in our stress levels, in our work dynamics, in our relationship dynamics. Birth rates for women age 40 to 44 have actually increased. The birth rates have increased for women in their 40s to 44 in 2024, suggesting more women are for sure successfully conceiving later in life and also maintaining that pregnancy to give birth to great, beautiful babies. And I think there's definitely more research. It's not even I know there's more research around women who are conceiving in their 50s as well. So what does it feel like in her body? You feel the pressure as a physical sensation, the urgency, the decision making that is coming from the fear rather than the desire. And I really want to highlight that the fear is what is driving this conversation. It is a fear-based conversation. A fear-based conversation based off statistical data that we just went through, that when you take away the emotional aspects and you just look at it as evidence-based data, it's just that. It's not cold, it's not warm, it's not scary, it's not happy. It's just data. The application of the fear is what is driving through society, through your culture, through your family, through expectations, what we've been told to be true. 35 is crazy, 40 is even crazier, 45 you shouldn't even try, right? That is what is driving the urgency, driving that clock. And the grief that shows up when she sees a pregnancy announcement, when you notice that your friends are getting pregnant sooner, faster, earlier, and things like that, your sisters, your cousins, it really reshapes you. And that's what we're definitely seeing today coming to a head. The reality of wanting to be a mother and the desire to have children and procreate coming to a head with how much time spent you chose to divert that quote-unquote optimal time for fertility to have a career, to build the life that you have, and how much that is quote-unquote costing you now. And I want to totally reframe this loss in this conversation, or this perceived loss. This is not just a clinical symptom, but it's something to do with how you feel in your body. And it shows up for sure later on in the effects of how your body is thinking about conception. So what actually changes as you age when it comes to your body functions and your fertility? One, ovarian aging is not just about the egg cells, but about the whole ecosystem of your ovaries and how they function. I think I spoke in the last video about how it's not just about ovulation, it's about being able to get the correct hormone triggers to even create follicles, multiple, plural follicles, to then have the dominant follicle, the egg that's supposed to be released, to then be able to release it and then allow it to go through. So it's surrounding the cells and the tissues of the ovaries that play a crucial role in how the egg matures and how quickly fertility can change. The number of eggs decrease as you age. You're born with all the eggs that you need and will have for your life. And so you can't get any more, and you lose some naturally at your own birth. You lose a lot again during puberty, and you lose them every time you go through a menstrual cycle, right? So that number declines, and that's not something that you can negotiate with. You have the eggs that you have. The third thing is the quality of eggs, specifically the chromosomal integrity, does decline with age, right? Because you're born with the number of eggs you got. So when you were born, or really when you were gestating within your mom's womb, that's the quality of them. And something that you can think of is like a snow globe sitting on a shelf for years and years and years and years. The quality of you being able to shake that snow globe, yeah, you'll shake it and the snow will move, but is it as potent or as quote-unquote higher quality compared to when you first bought that snow globe versus 40 years later? That is a gross visual explanation for those who are visual to think about it. The snow globe will shake You will see the snow. It'll look beautiful. But will the potency and the vibrancy of that, the quality of it, still remain the same? That we know declines with age. This is why the number of miscarriages increase as you get older. For women in their mid 30s, the risk of miscarriage is about 1 to 10, and that increases to 1 in 3 in women age 40 and 44. This is information that's worth having and knowing, but not creating fear around it to inform your decisions. What is fluctuable is the environment where those eggs are maturing. And that is like the modifiable things: nutrition, inflammation, stress load, sleep, mitochondrial health. The egg quality is fixed. The quality of the ecosystem is not fixed. So when you go to your midwife, when you go to your healthcare provider, what are they testing you? What are you offering? They may offer you AMA testing, which is the atrial follicular count, a day 3 hormone. This gives a snapshot of your ovarian reserve. And this is really helpful, especially if you're moving on to assisted reproductive technology when natural conception is difficult. And this is rarely a nuanced conversation about the difference between what is fixed and what is influenceable, or a conversation about the psychological or emotional weight of the timeline narratives that does weigh on your body. So let's wrap up and summarize what we all just said here, right? Medicine measures what's happening in the ovaries. We have the labs to do that. We have the snapshot to do that. We have some ultrasounds that can sometimes show that, right? We can get that information. The timeline pressure is not neutral. The pressure that you're feeling, the sirens that you're hearing are not neutral. It is a chronic stressor living in your body every single day that you're trying to conceive with this notion that you've had to believe in for decades and decades and decades. Fear-based conception attempts to look at different physiological than desire-based ones. The nervous system knows the difference. The body knows the difference. And you've been thinking that making one of the most profound decisions of your life from a place of urgency and scarcity rather than clarity and sovereignty. So the deeper question to push us and springboard us into the next section is, what would you actually choose about timing, about readiness, about your life if the clock was silent for a moment? This deeper pattern that we've are breaking down and highlighting in this time, in this space right now, is that you, as a high achieving, empowered, self-driven woman, have naturally used this notion and this societal, cultural, and fear-based conception to run your framework and run your decisions around your own conception through, which is very similar to the life you already live with optimization, deadlines, and performance. That's all that's just been happening. We are running the same desire to be a mother, to conceive, through the same filters that we use to live and build the life we want. And we wonder why we're all petrified and scared and behaving as if 35 is like doomsday, because we're still running on the deadline. We're still running on the thing. We're still running on the cause. We're still running on the effect. We haven't changed it because we're running on fear. We're not running on our desire. And there has been a conflated readiness with urgency. And readiness does not mean the same thing as the urgency that you feel. feeling ready, feeling prepared is an internal mechanism that we've now naturally coupled with the urgency to. The urgency to perform, the urgency to show up, the urgency to do the thing. Your internal readiness, though, may not be ready. Your internal drives may not be ready. And I'm telling you now, that's okay. But when you have this loud screaming part behind you telling you, like, well, you need to be ready, you need to hurry up, and you need to do what you got to do, that's not helping us. When you're micromanaged and when you think about your job, you don't perform well. Well, the sense of urgency that we have around conception, because we have added so much fear-based emotions to the conversation, along with anger, guilt, shame, sadness, hurt, and also, the fear-mongering that some healthcare providers definitely do, and the health industry definitely does. And also the example or the story that we hear from our sister, our friend, our cousin, our mother, our aunt, who had difficulty, like, these are all running and creating the matrix that we are now filtering our desire, our internal readiness to have the desire, because that's even a separate thing, the internal readiness to have the desire to conceive. And now we're hitting this, we're gridlocked. And this is not a space to make any decision, in my opinion, that is helpful for your life. And it also causes grief underneath all this pressure, all this gridlocking, all this like tension. There's a grief that comes over you with how much internal doubt you're creating, because you've spent, quote unquote, all the past years doing what you wanted to do, doing your career things, and not focused on what you should be doing. And that is real grief that a lot of people and a lot of women deal with when they're going through infertility, and they're especially going through fertility services. That is a real grief point that you may be feeling in your actual life when you think about, why is this not working for me? And why did I spend all my time doing XYZ when I should have been doing all this and this? We see the women come out, and yeah, they have a great baby at 42, 44, 45, 48. But sometimes you could even hear in their speech, if they haven't processed the grief, if they haven't really done the deeper inner work to refocus it and reframe it, you can still hear the grief, and they have a child, they have children. This is an opportunity, through asking and allowing this space here, to let's look at the evidence, to then springboard us into what's really happening emotionally. What is this also creating due to these mental chatters and this gridlocking? And how does that spiritually make us ready or make us not ready? Make us hesitant, not move us forward, keep us gridlocked? The natural reclaiming of your timeline as a sovereign is not reckless. It's not a denial of biology, but making a decision from desire rather than fear. And could you, for a moment, suspend your belief that the fear that's driving you is coming from a place that is unprocessed, just as chaotic and creative and beautiful your desire is coming from? Could they be coming from the same place? Because they want the same goal, they want the same target, which is conception, which is for you to be a mother, for you to experience that, to have the life that you want, to create, to have joy and have love. Is that all coming from the same place, potentially? Could we believe that for a moment? Because that is a powerful place to be in. That's a powerful moment to be in. So, more deeper questions is, what is the difference between a decision made from biology's urgency and a decision made from genuine desire? If you remove the clock, if you remove the urgency, if you remove the noise just for a day and really truly sit with yourself, do you, one, want to have a child? Two, are you ready for a child? Internal readiness, not a logical, tangible readiness, an internal readiness. Am I ready to embark on this journey, or this forever lifetime journey of motherhood? Asking yourself without the noise. The second deeper aspect is, have you ever actually asked yourself if you want this? That question in particular is very powerful. And I don't think many women even allow themselves to answer that question, or ask the question to answer it, because they're just running on autopilot. Do you really want this, actually? Without the fear and running out of time, if you could suspend the biology for a moment, do you want this? And the last deeper question is, the version of you that conceives from sovereignty versus the version of you who conceives from panic. You know that you're going to begin motherhood in two different paradigms, two different internal foundations, two different internal knowings. Which one do you want? Which one feels better to you? Some more reflective questions. These are deeper questions to ask. But more reflective questions to ask is, when you imagine having your child, is the feeling underneath it desire or urgency? Can you tell the difference? Second question, what decisions about your timeline have been made by fear rather than by you? What internal dialogue has been running about how you saw something as successful as your life, your achievements, your education, your career, your things that you've attained, right? How has that changed to mean something different for you? How has that changed to be seen as something different? And if the biology was completely handled, right? Totally under control, a non-factor, what would you still need to resolve internally before you felt ready? The work of separating yourself and really seeing all these parts and actually wanting to know from the source of where this fear is coming from, and even more deeply thinking about what you're afraid of losing, that's not always a conversation that can be done and be implemented and supported in a clinical setting. And it's not always a conversation that should be done alone. That is the identity work in which we focus on and curtail ourselves through the lens of villainhood, architecture, and activation within Edge. And that is what I optimize and I gear Edge towards, really creating the space and the time to do that for yourself. And if you're interested in Edge, you can find it linked down below in the description box. So to finally end this all off, because I feel like this is a very somber but very important imperative addition to the series, is that the biology of age and fertility is really a honest conversation that deserves to be foundationally hit on the evidence. What is the truth? What is the data set? What is the average? But also the narrative, the cost of that narrative that's been living underneath your body, underneath your soul, underneath your mind, underneath your emotions when this conversation is pinged up, when someone brings it up, when someone asks you a question. The hidden urgency, grief, and pressure deserves its time to be decoupled. I want you to make decisions of your life, especially this one, from a very crystal clear, profound place for yourself. And really understanding for yourself that clarity will always be more powerful than fear. You are always your next frontier. I'm so happy that you were able to stay through this. I would love to know your comments down below. And also, I would love for you to share this with a friend or family member and subscribe and like. I'll talk to you later. Bye.